What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Wild Nutrition Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Heskett, and I forget what episode this is. It's in the 140s, though, which is pretty cool. So today's topic, we are going to be talking about what is anti-diet culture a little bit, and then what is moderation. This is a thing I see a lot with the carnivore community, but also like the primal community as well, that we need to talk about so you can navigate the online world of health and nutrition, and know who's bullshit and who's not, and kind of figure out where you fall along the lines of moderation. But before we get into that, make sure if you don't follow me on other social media channels, I am more active there. So Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram and TikTok are going to be my most active channels. Give me a follow there. If you want to get in direct contact with me, Instagram is going to be the best thing. I check messages more often there than any of the other platforms. So that's down below in the show notes. Also, make sure to follow, whatever is appropriate for the channel, or service that you're listening/watching this on. So let's get into it. What is moderation? Eat in moderation. It's something you hear all over the internet. Everything fits in moderation, blah, 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 blah. But then you have the paleo, ancestral, carnivore type movements. You see Bobby, there's a few other people out there. They're not in the carnivore community, but they're in that more like primal health, crunchy mom type thing. The new thing is Butter Mom, whose content's super toxic. So, what is moderation? Because the way they make it sound is it's a 50-50 split, which it's not. So I do want to just come out of the gate swinging of like, they're always wrong, and they're always gaslighting you. They're always, or other health professionals, they're salesmen. Almost all of these people are salesmen, and it's not that I hide that I am a coach. I make money through coaching. I make money through some of the links down below with supplements. Like I make a small commission. I'm not hiding that, but a lot of these people do hide that. And they have motives of growing a massive following. They don't really care. They disguise that I'm just promoting health, but they don't care. They just want to become famous and make a lot of money. They don't care about you. Whereas I want you to navigate and make choices. When we're talking about moderation and processed foods, you don't have to eat processed foods. But there's a difference between thinking like, I can never have the processed food because it's toxic, and it doesn't really do much for my body. I don't crave it, therefore I don't have it. There's a different mentality there. There's also a different mentality of stepping stones you take along your path to health that these people don't take into consideration. They will come out of the gates and say, like, you must cut everything out. Otherwise, you are a bad parent, you're a bad spouse, you're killing yourself, you are this, you are that. There's a lot of very toxic behavior versus the way behaviors should change over time is like a stepping stone of, let's remove some of the processed food and replace it with other things. Let's slowly do this over time. At the end, we get to the same place. However, if we do it slowly, we can do it in a way that builds confidence. You don't overhaul your entire lifestyle. You feel good as you begin to learn more about nutrition and your body and everything else, versus basically what every fad diet does of overhaul everything. You run on motivation, get burnt out, and then you fall off. So let's talk about what is moderation, because I've been kind of saying that for almost 5 minutes now. So you probably heard of the 80-20 rule or the 90-10 rule, and ultimately that is what moderation is. And if you're not familiar with that, it's basically eat minimally processed whole foods 80% of the time, and 20% of the time you can be more processed stuff, or you can be more strict. You can go 90-10, you can go 95-5. but 80/20 is about, for most health professionals, about as far as we'll go. But what the fuck does that even look like? Because you're like, great. Which 20%? Or what's 80%? Like how do you figure that out? So we can look at meals during a week. We can look at your calories during the day. And there's different ways. So there's no hard concrete, this is exactly what it is, and this is what it isn't. It is a little bit up for interpretation and doing it in the way that best fits you. So we want to go with, let's say we're going to go 80/20, because that's about as much processed stuff as you want. If we go with a meal approach, we're going to take all the meals we eat in the week. So 3 times 7. We're just going to say that. You know what? We'll do that first. 3 times 7 is 21 meals, and we're going to do 20% as less processed or as more processed, etc. So times 20% means 4 meals out of the week will be a little bit more processed food. So out of the 21, so 80% of the meals are good. 4 of those meals, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and maybe one other lunch or something. Okay, that's one way to do it. So 4.2. I prefer to look at it in forms of calories personally. So if we do a 2,000 calorie diet, that's going to be 20% would be 400 calories. So 1,600 calories per day, 2 whole minimally processed foods. 400, right? 400 calories. Yes, 400 calories are going to go to more processed stuff. And that's kind of like the max end. So if you're like, wow, that's 4 meals per week seems like a lot. That's the 80/20. You can go 90/10. You can go 85/15. You can go 95/5. Like you can do 3 meals, 2 meals, 1 meal per week, whatever works best for you. And you can go like some weeks are going to be worse than others, but we're going to kind of set that limit of trying to aim for 4. Now, let's say you do 4 meals per day. So it's like 3 meals plus a snack. So the way I like to structure snacks are they're more like mini meals. So let's do that. So if we do that, that's 28 meals per week times 20, not 0.20, 0.2%. So 28 times 20% is 5.6 meals per week. So that might be that snack at the end of the night is a little bit more processed for almost every single thing. But all the meals are pretty much in line. Or maybe that snacks, maybe it's like every once in a while you're doing a snack. So I'm saying these, and it's not that you have to do it. It's giving you that like upper limit of here's how much you can do. And then we have to see if you get results. Because 80/20 is better for maintenance or a building phase versus 90/10 is a little bit better for a weight loss phase. It just is. It's unless you're doing the calorie approach. The calorie approach is a little bit easier, but those processed foods tend to be less filling. So the more calories you eat of processed food, the less likely you are to be full, and the more you're more likely to be hungry. So that's one way to approach this, and one way to think about things is with moderation. It is how many meals. It can be a percentage of that meal. I like to view it as calories. Like we are going to spend X amount of calories on, if you think of, actually, let's back up. If we want to think of calories like money. So think of calories as money in your bank account. But every day we need to spend all of that. We have to spend all that money every single day. But there's bills to be paid and everything every single day. So let's say it's 2,000 calories, $2,000. Well, with the 80/20 approach with calories, 1,600 are going to go to rent or your mortgage. It's going to go to utilities, your internet, cell phone, electric, blah, 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 blah. And then you're going to have some money left over, and that's your fun money. That is go to the movie theater. That's going to be maybe go to an amusement park, go see a concert, something like that, like more fun stuff, buy a new video game, whatever your thing is that you find fun, you're going to have $400 for that. Okay, great. Now, I know this is an exaggeration, but everybody works with money in some way, so it makes it a little bit more tangible to think of it that way. So you can spend up to that amount to go and do more fun stuff. Or you could say, like, instead of, if you're like, well, you were making the case for, well, if I don't want to spend $400 on that, well, let's say then you'd spend $200 on more fun stuff, but the other $200, let's say you're going to eat more whole foods, that's going to be spent on things like coaching or new books or something to improve your skills in education, something to work on yourself, not hobby stuff, not just fun stuff, is something to improve your personal professional life, something like that. So you can make that argument of that, well, that's the 80-20. Well, if I want to do 90-10, okay, well, it's kind of like doing this. You still have to spend all the money. You still have to eat all the calories. So that's one way to think about it, is it's going to be a small portion. But why does this work? And why would you want to go with this approach? Isn't removing all processed food going to be healthier for you? Potentially, yes. So there's a grain of truth with what many of these very toxic influencers are saying. There's a small grain of truth. But if we want to do this long term, we're always going to be around processed food. It's everywhere. And we need a good relationship with food for our mental health. So is it better to be ultra restrictive? Think of it as a toxin, but always kind of like crave it, always kind of want it, but always be like, oh, it's toxic. Oh, it's toxic. Or is it better to be able to understand that a small amount's not going to hurt you? The poison's in the dose. So a small amount is totally fine. Your body can process it fine, blah, 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 blah. You're still eating plenty of protein and fiber and micronutrients from the rest of your diet, and occasionally you have a treat. Arguably, that's going to be better for most people. And you can do it as restrictive as you want. But it's the mindset of, it's not off the table. I just limit it and I know I feel better. So it's a better mindset to have. Again, going back to why does this work? Well, especially in maintenance phases or a build phase, if we go 80-20 or especially 90-10, if you're eating mostly minimally processed foods, you're hitting a protein goal, you're hitting a fiber goal, and you're doing that through mostly food and not supplements, there's a good chance you are getting all your micronutrients. Because the argument is, oh, well, these foods are all devoid of micronutrients, so it's not doing anything for you. Well, track your stuff. Go use Chronometer, track your food. It tracks your micronutrients and see where you're at. Are you deficient in anything? A lot of times, like, again, I eat venison, which is very nutrient dense. I'll eat a lot of veggies, which are very nutrient dense. I'll eat some fruit. Again, fairly nutrient dense. Not all of them. Not like peaches, apples are not very nutrient dense, but if you're eating berries every single day, they're pretty nutrient dense. And so you can take a look and be like, I'm not deficient. I'm hitting all these goals. And with micronutrients, more isn't necessarily better. There is too much, or your body's just not going to utilize it. There's a reason if you take a B vitamin, even a really high quality with methylated B vitamins, you're going to pee neon yellow because your body can't utilize all of it. You just literally pee out the supplement. So you don't need to get more. Like if you hit your RDA or slightly above that, that is fine, but you don't need more. Like more is not going to make you even more healthier. You just need to hit that. Your body can only absorb and utilize so much in a given day. So you hit that number, and if you still have 200, 400 calories left, you can kind of do whatever the fuck you want with it. Like you've hit your protein goal, you've hit your fiber goal, or you're close to them. You hit your micronutrient needs. What harm is the processed food going to do to you? Don't say fucking chemicals. Don't, don't, don't. If somebody says chemicals or process, but doesn't give you what that process or that chemical is and the dosage needed, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. I just got in an argument with somebody on Facebook, moron. Um, I say that in the nicest way, respectfully. He was a moron. He was complaining that a protein powder that I like to use, that they use sunflower lecithin in it because that's a seed oil and seed oils are toxic. First of all, how do you know somebody's a moron? You just do a quick Google search of how you make sunflower lecithin. And by the way, you're like, well, that sounds like it's some sort of like solvent. So you can make this at home. You need glycerin, which is the backbone to triglyceride. So it's in fat. And they use it in pre-workouts because it helps give you a really good pump. So you need glycerin, you need sunflowers, you need salt, and that's it. You blend it up and you can let it sit in it, and eventually you have sunflower lecithin, which can be used for a lot of things. It's also cold process. You never heat it up. So one of the arguments with seed oils is you heat it up and that like causes them to oxidize, blah, blah, blah. This research doesn't support that, but that's the argument. Well, this is cold processed. And he said, you're delusional if you think companies aren't doing it in a toxic way. It's like, why would they do it any other way? You need a giant blender. You need glycerin and you need salt and water. And you just let that go through a sieve or a sieve. That's it. Why would companies use a bunch of toxic chemicals when you could just do it in a giant vat, in a giant blending machine? So he clearly didn't know what it is. And sunflower lecithin is actually really high in phosphatidylcholine and phosphatidylserine, which are very popular in the nootropic world for improving brain health. There's potential benefits to those substances with cellular health, like your cell wall health, and a bunch of other benefits. So it's actually like it's actually loaded with a lot of good things. You're not getting the dosage you need of those, but those are really good. This is not a seed oil. It was just, but because it sounded like some sort of processed chemical and you had a quote unquote seed oil, this person thought toxic. When you actually look it up, like it's not fucking toxic. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You're a moron. Which I told him that he should never give out nutrition information ever again. So if you're wondering if I'm coming out of the gates saying he's a moron, no, I did not. I did tell him he needs an education nutrition info because he should never give nutrition info ever again online, or ever, because he's clearly uneducated, which he did not appreciate, but he quickly backed out of that conversation after one more comment. But that's an example of people will say weird things. Bobby's been caught multiple times of added sugar. Oh, they have 1 or 2 grams of added sugar, but then he'll back a company as a financial backing with a company, and they add 2 or 3 grams of added sugar, and it's just a dash. So you have to be aware of those things, and that's where the moderation, like 1 gram of added sugar, is not going to really affect you. That's moderation. Like it's not going to have much effect. It is 4 calories out of the 15, 16, 2,000, 2,500, 3,000 calories you're going to eat in a day, or even 5 grams of added sugar. Like 5 grams of added sugar, 20, like what is it, 20 calories, 4 times 5. That's nothing. Like you can't just think of it as like, oh, automatically toxic. What is the toxic load of that? If it was, you're having multiple Starbucks drinks per day, like each meal a day, you get one in the morning, you have one with lunch, and then you have one like a milkshake after dinner. That's a problem. Absolutely. You're displacing whole foods with that. You're probably not going to get your nutrient requirements within the amount of calories you need to maintain your weight or lose weight. If you're trying to build, it's still probably not a good idea. So, moderation is eating 80 to 90% minimally processed to whole foods, having a little bit more fun and freedom if you choose to the rest of the time. So, here's an example of my diet. I'm going to eat occasionally. I do French toast. Like this morning, we were out of the whole grain bread, so I use sourdough. Some people say that's um, more processed. Some people will say that's fine. It's low in fiber, so I consider it a little bit more processed. This is me personally. I'm not telling you what the fuck to do. Sourdough's better for you than just regular white bread, but it's not whole grain bread. There's very little fiber or anything in it. Um, so I had that because and gave my girls the whole grain bread. Um, but I'm probably gonna have a little bit of ice cream tonight or something. But usually I'm having eggs and fruit, yogurt, some sort of that kind of combination. Sometimes the whole grain French toast in the morning, with which has a little dash of honey in it. That's my breakfast. So pretty much very much like whole foods. Most of it's single ingredient. The French toast obviously is not single ingredient, but we usually use the Dave's Killer, so high fiber, etc. Lunch, leftovers, but it's protein. Sometimes I'll use our wrap, which is going to be more processed, but we found this one company and they make really high fiber wraps. They're 12 grams of fiber per wrap. It's like Olay Foods, something like that. And I looked and the ingredients are pretty good, actually. So I'll use that. A lot of times we're out, so I just use regular tortilla wraps today. Or it's pasta or rice or some sort of carb there with lots of veggies and meat. Dinner, again, we're not doing a ton of refined stuff. And then usually at night, I'm having oatmeal with protein powder. I'll throw in peanut butter. But my wife's been making ice cream, so I have a small amount of ice cream. So there might be small amounts of refined food like white rice or white pasta throughout, but I'm getting tons of veggies, tons of other stuff. And then I might do a snack at night, but a lot of times I'm just doing something that is protein and oats or more yogurt, sometimes with protein powder in it. I do like the cheesecake style, maybe some peanut butter, things like that. So it is still mostly whole foods most of the time. And then once in a while, like on the weekends, we'll have something more processed. Or we need to use up a bunch of peaches, so we made a peach crisp. Where do you put that on the line of, is that very processed? Because it's just cut up peaches, and then yeah, there's brown sugar and there's other things in there. But where on the line is that on the processing spectrum? And that's another thing to think of. Processing is going to be run the gamut of not processed at all. So think like a whole chicken or celery you just bought from the store, to hyper processed. And most foods are going to be somewhere in between. Like if you buy chicken, boneless skinless chicken breast, technically it's processed. It's minimally processed, but the skin's removed, the bones are removed, it's cut up and nice and easy for you. And then you're probably going to cut it up some more. You're going to process it some more. So that's minimally processed. Veggies, if you cook them and do other things, you're processing them. If you go and make your own tomato sauce, you're processing it. And this is where we need to get in the conversation of I don't need what is hyper processed food and where in the line do we want to be? So like that peach crisp I just talked to you about, that's processed food. Sure, there's some brown sugar in there, there's some white flour, but then there's oats, there's butter's processed, which they all claim, but if it's processed, you have to take milk and churn it to make butter. But then there's the peaches, which were just cut up. Yes, it's processed, but so is that hyper processed or moderately processed food? Where does that lie? And the point being, we want to think of food on a spectrum and we want to enjoy food. We don't need to be hyper restrictive. We don't need to think of everything as chemicals and toxins and everything else, because most people think that the government is trying to kill them. And I'm not the biggest supporter of the government, or all the organizations. But when organizations give out recommendations, you have to think of it not on the individual level, not on you. They don't necessarily care about you as the individual, which is true. They're giving information out at population level. Like, so the FDA comes out and they give a report. It's at population level, which is the entire fucking United States. So 350 million people. So you're just like one small dot in that. That's the way most of those studies are done, or it's in different sections of the United States. So it's not that they're trying to be toxic, but you have to think of what can people do? What can 350 million people do? What can 100, like get in a room and try to convince 100 people to do something? Like 350 million, how can we convince people to eat a little bit better across that many people? It's very difficult to do. Same thing with doctors. Like, what can we do to help improve health at population level? Well, this is what we're seeing. You as an individual is different, and that's where you do need to take it into your own hands a little bit, and hopefully have a doctor where you can have open communication. They understand where you're at, and you're not just the average of these studies. Like, you're taking care of yourself, you're doing these other things. Okay, different story. But back to moderation and processing, there's not a ton of deadly chemicals. There's chemicals that are banned in Europe that we use here in America. Guess what? There's chemicals that are banned here in America that they use in Europe, and they have potential nasty side effects too. So you can't use those metrics. So what do you eat? Go to the grocery store. Everything in the produce section, pretty much everything in the meat section and the dairy section, and figure out what you tolerate and what you don't tolerate. And then add in some other foods, add some fun stuff if you choose to. You don't need to be afraid of cookies. You can have that. The blood sugar spike, that's normal. I don't care what the fucking Primal Bot says. She's a moron. One of the most toxic accounts out there. She just said like vegetables are fake and basically the equivalent of processed foods. So like, you're an idiot. What you want to do is eat mostly minimally processed food. Think like steak, potato, and broccoli. Not a terrible dinner. Chicken and rice and broccoli. Don't like broccoli? Swap it for any other veggies. Figure out what veggies. Does broccoli not agree with you? I know if I eat too many Brussels sprouts, they don't agree with me. Great. There's kale, there's Swiss chard, there's mushrooms, there's cucumbers, there's tomatoes, there's bell peppers, there's carrots, parsnips. I bet there's a bunch of veggies you haven't tried. There's peas. And yeah, some of these don't exactly, like, tomatoes are a fruit. Yeah, they are. There's a ton of things you can do. And you want to eat in that way, in the way that makes you feel best, and the way that promotes a healthy relationship with food. So with that being said, that's going to be it today, guys. So hopefully this was helpful to you. If you have more questions, you can always reach out to me. Again, Instagram. I'm actually traveling for vacation when I'll be on vacation when this episode comes out. So Instagram is going to be the best way to get a hold of me while I'm on vacation. Facebook is a little wonky sometimes. I get many notifications from like group chats too in there. So sometimes I lose other like single like messages. But that's going to be the best place. So if you need any help, feel free to reach out to me. Also give the channel a like and a follow, rate it 5 stars, as that helps the channel get pushed out for more people to find it.